Hey everyone, wanted to welcome you all to the October 18th edition of the Agile at Scale special interest group for Agile Austin. Wanted to do a brief introduction, especially for those who not attended an Agile Austin meetup before. A little refresher on who we are for those that have also attended in the past. We are a 501c6 nonprofit. We connect people and foster professional growth through events like this, where we have speakers and facilitators, and people come in and kind of give us their perspective on the lay of the Agile land. So we do have a board of directors as a nonprofit. As you can see there, I am the CTO on the board, and we have a lot of other good members. If you ever have requests, you can always reach out to me directly. I have my email address at the end of this presentation, but board@agileaustin.org will also get you to the rest of the board. So we want to say thank you to all of our sponsors, especially Agile Velocity, who is our platinum sponsor. They've been with us for many years and have sponsored many of our events and our conferences. Keep Austin Agile, which has been going strong now for over a decade. We also recently signed up a gold sponsor, ResumeX. I'll have a link for their site as well as the others here in a moment. And we also recently had a re-up from Ad Meliora Coaching. So we really appreciate all the support of the sponsors. They make events like this free and open to not just Agile Austin members, but the public at large. So really appreciate them. In addition to that, Agile Velocity has a code that you can use for any public workshops that they have. So you can use code Agile Austin for that discount. And so, yeah, feel free to check out the site when I posted in the Zoom comments, and would love to see people make use of their services. We are always looking for other sponsors, so contact at agileaustin.org. We'll get to the rest of our staff as well, and they can help out with that. We also have membership levels. In terms of membership levels, memberships, not levels, but um, so we have an active Slack space for members to join. You can, of course, as well vote or sit on the board. Always love new board members, fresh ideas. And then there are special events and training discounts available as well. So agileaustin.org for more details there. We also have various other special interest groups, and our meetup page has over 7,600 members now. So lots of people understand about the events that we're hosting, which include a book club, Agile Coaching SIG, Agile at Scale, this one, Project and AI Leaders, and Lean Kanban. So thriving community of various SIGs that we have available. And so we also have a professional development scholarship that's available. I'll post a link in the chat in a little bit if you want to apply. And so the scholarships are, of course, granted at the discretion of the organization. So each submission is reviewed, and you do need to be an Agile Austin member. So anyways, yeah, I will post a link about that. But especially in these tougher economic times, every dollar can count in terms of your professional development, not just these events, but the scholarship that's available. So about this SIG, Leland started it up way back in 2016, 8 years now. So I joined him in 2020 as co-facilitator, and we've been going strong ever since. So our upcoming events, we've got Candace Hokanson, behavior-driven development when there are no users. Looking forward to that presentation. And even though we don't have topics, we do have speakers signed up, which we're refining topics with for both December and January. We've got Matt Roberts and Daniel Walsh coming up. I think we have February spoken for as well. But Definitely always looking for additional topics from folks, but don't want to take up any more time here. So I'm going to hand it over to Jill in just a moment. You can read there about her bio, and she's going to be talking to us today about delivering value through imperfection. So final slide, again, that contact information, leland.newsom@agileaustin.org or ben.rogers@agileaustin.org if you want to present at a future Agile at Scale SIG, or if you want to chat to us about anything, happy to chat with you. So I'm going to stop my sharing and pass things over to Jill. So Jill, take us away.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ben. I appreciate that intro. You guys have a lot going on here at Agile at Austin. So just a hello to everyone. This is actually my first time joining this group. I do not live in Austin, but man, it's one of my favorite cities. I always have a great time when I'm there. As Ben mentioned, my name's Jill Palkoner. I'm a director of product delivery at CapTech Consulting. And I'm really thrilled to be here today to talk a little bit about product and specifically how to work through sort of the realities of day-to-day challenges. I think so much of what is laid out in the theory behind methodologies and frameworks, they sometimes make really broad stroke assumptions around the types of environments that we're actually working in. And I know I feel that many times we're sometimes stuck between a rock and a hard place. That could be, say, like a company's appetite for change and a leading practice. And so the thought behind what I'm sharing today is really how to take those sort of small steps in the right direction, even if not everything is perfectly aligned in the environment that you're working in. And my hope is to leave this group with some actual like tactical strategies to walk away with. Because to kind of play on the theater theme here, we know the show must go on. So I'll kind of jump into things here. For transparency, this presentation was originally prepared for a conference talk that I did at Product Fest in Richmond, Virginia. And it happened to take place at a theater. And so we were drawing sort of on the theme. So you'll see a lot of references just to like, you know, theaters and Act One and Act Two and all of that. But I really graciously appreciate the ability to share it again with all of you. But you'll obviously see just hints of these theater and play references. So I've got these three sort of acts to share with you today in hopes to give you some of those tactical things to take back to your product teams now rather than later. So let's dive into sort of the first part of our show here. Sort of keeping the focus on your customers and getting their feedback. So I'll start this off with what I believe to be maybe an unpopular opinion, and that's that testing with anyone is better than testing with no one. So connecting with your target audience is great, but getting feedback from a third party, and a third party that isn't intimately invested with the creation of your product, can really have a massive impact on its success. So even in the face of strict budgeting and deadlines and people challenges, opportunities do exist to provide value and involve customers in the process. And I'll give you a quick sort of example of what I mean here. At a former client, we had very limited access to end users, and we had just a heck of a time trying to convince leadership as to why we needed to talk to our customers on a regular basis. So we tried to work with what we had for basic usability feedback and first impressions of our product. And I remember actually printing out designs and taking sketches to the security guards at the building we worked at and just asking them quick questions on what they were seeing and what they would do next to maybe prove or disprove a hypothesis that we had. And this may seem trivial, but it was a way to really easily get impact on the product that wasn't heavily biased or jaded by those that were on the project team or in some, position of power or authority. And also, those security guards really love just taking a few moments to share their thoughts with me. So, good part of their day as well. So while that security guard example is sort of a solid one, gathering customer feedback is not always easy, and there are a variety of sort of challenges that sometimes keep teams from talking to customers. And I think we've heard them all. So, we're not allowed to talk to our customers. People don't want to participate. People are too biased. We just don't have time for that, right? And we don't have the money to do this. And all of this is 10 times harder to do when stakeholders or leadership don't even believe in customer research. So you really have to spend extra time and energy, sometimes convincing them of the value before jumping through those other hurdles. At the end of the day, customer feedback matters. We're here because we want to make great products and solve real customer problems, right? And to solve them, we must be able to talk to real people and not just design based on our own assumptions, beliefs, or perceptions. And otherwise, we really just risk not meeting customer needs, which makes our sort of hard work just a total waste. So understanding customer needs opens the door to better, more informed product development. And ideally, that leads to a better customer experience and more loyal customers that come back to buy our products. So gathering customer feedback and building that into our development process leads to more revenue generation. But I'll talk about that a little bit more later on. Okay, so now that hopefully I've made this case about customer feedback being important, let's debunk some of the myths so we can kind of create or figure out how we can create these better products. There are many out there, but I'll focus on sort of these three that I hear sort of the most with our clients. First myth is we don't need customer research. We know our customers. In reality, without regular customer research and feedback methods in place, you probably don't know your customer as well as you think. So what are the things that they value about the relationship with your company? What do they wish you would change about your product? Where they experience pain across their journey. These are all things that you might not actually know. And do you know how pain differs between maybe different customer segments? So it can be difficult to know customers' true feelings about your product. And the reality is there's many reasons for that. So most customers just don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. So they might not be that forthcoming with their actual opinions. Oftentimes they can't articulate their needs clearly up front, but maybe like the symptoms of those. And then they can be really quick to just switch brands after even one poor experience. So maybe not even kind of willing to engage again. And sometimes they just simply have never been asked for feedback before and haven't had the opportunity to provide that. So here's some fun stats to kind of support my point here. 32% of customers would stop doing business with a brand they loved after just one bad experience. Woof, right? So there isn't a ton of room for error here. You really have to get it right every time in order for people to keep coming back. And that's a pretty high standard to hit, right? Only 1 in 26 customers will complain if there is a problem, which leaves essentially the other 96% silent. So you'll never know their true feelings and won't be able to fix their problems because, frankly, they're just not going to speak up. 86% of buyers are willing to pay more for a great customer experience, And according to some PwC research, the more expensive the item, the more they're willing to pay. So people want to work with businesses and products that are easy to work with and use and will pay more for it in the right settings. And then that leads us to the final stat here on the right. Not doing research could leave you behind your competitors, since about 46% of business professionals claim they are prioritizing customer experience over the next 5 years. So you don't want to be part of that that group that's not investing in those experiences. Okay. Myth number 2, collecting customer feedback costs too much and doesn't offer ROI. So while collecting customer feedback may seem costly upfront, it actually provides significant ROI when measured effectively. And according to Forrester research, for every dollar in UX, there's a return of $100. So involving customers early and often reduces risk and costly rework down the line when you're essentially vetting with users before any code is created. It also keeps customers coming back more often, essentially adding to your bottom line. So there are a variety of sort of research methods out there aimed at understanding user behavior needs. And these are meant to help to guide design and really development decisions. And these methodologies range in sort of the time it takes and overall cost. And so we've kind of got this laid out on this scale here of cheap and fast on the left and then expensive and time consuming on the right. But it doesn't have to take forever and be expensive to move the needle for your product teams. You just need to pick the right methodology for what you're trying to learn. So let's talk about which methodologies sort of make sense for what. And you can pay attention to the colors first. I've got this little sort of key on the bottom, but we'll talk through them. So the yellow really indicates those analyzes what users do and their behavior. So these practices take a look at how users are functioning and those overall behaviors. The light blue analyzes what essentially they say and what they think. And then the pink focuses on a mix of both. And now we'll take a look at the sort of different shapes here. So the circles collect quantitative data. And the diamonds focus really on that qualitative feedback. And then those rounded diamonds focus on essentially a bit of both. So as you can see, each research method offers a unique lens on the user, and usability testing gives you a pretty big bang for your buck, especially when it comes to creating web and mobile experiences. Okay. Now on to the sort of third and final myth. Users already know what they want. Contrary to popular belief, users often struggle to actually be able to articulate their needs and desires accurately. So they may not know how to fix this issue. They just know they have this pain. And businesses need to instead interpret customer needs and essentially their jobs to be done. So as I mentioned earlier on, customers really struggle to articulate their needs. In addition to that, we as humans aren't good at predicting and following through with future behavior. So people make confident but false predictions about their future behavior, especially when presented with something new and unfamiliar. So there's a huge difference between maybe imagining using something and actually using it out in the wild. And because of that, customer preferences change frequently and are essentially unstable. So how do we decipher what customers really need? We have to really employ the right testing methodologies to uncover the real sort of unspoken pain. And we then need to kind of break through that noise behind what users say with research to give us actionable, objective insights to fuel sort of the growth of our products. Okay. And here's where I'm kind of summarizing our takeaways. So the things that you can do now to impact your teams, even if you're not in that perfect or ideal setting. So the first one, start talking to your customers, or frankly, talk to anyone who doesn't have a real investment or stake in what you're trying to develop. Two, pick 1 to 2 of the customer research methods that I talked about and apply and start gathering on them. And the third, start including customer feedback into each sprint planning and grooming session. Make it a regular part of everyday business for you and your team to really push your product's potential.
Hey, hey, Jill, there's a question in the chat about definition of bad experience versus non-ideal.
Oh, okay. Just the overall definition of what that would look like.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's, again, going back to what we would consider, like what we're expecting to see in those results. So a mix of sort of that qualitative data that we'd be getting from the users talking about their experience and interacting with that tool and their sort of expectations, as well as quantitatively what we're seeing from the data. So if it's a poor experience, where are we losing people in that experience? And so it's, to me, a blend of those two things. Does that help answer the question?
I think so, but they can post and we can or come off mute either way, and but I think you can go on.
Okay, great. All right, and feel free again to continue jumping in if there's questions. We're going to move on to our sort of act 2 here, just to keep things rolling. And want to talk a little bit about one trend you're probably hearing about absolutely everywhere. And, I did a lot of just preparation in preparing to talk about AI, but I am no AI expert. In fact, all of the podcasts and books that I was reading around AI, even that I would consider experts, are like, well, I'm not even an expert. This is moving so fast, right? It's revolutionizing every industry, every job function, every role, or at least has the potential to. So I want to try to focus on, just focus on AI through a product lens. And what do we need to be doing differently as leaders, engineers, when working? And for those of you that too are not really using AI today, it all kind of starts. There's just so many different products on the market, tools. One thing I'd kind of like to take a look at is using AI just to optimize your everyday, and in order to kind of understand where to and think about where an assistant may help you throughout your day, and pinpoint those pain points that you've got. And with those pain points in mind, identifying which of those sort of AI powered tools may help with some of those pain points that you've identified. And a great place to start are really chatbots. So your chat GPTs, Gemini, your Bing Copilots, right? These are tools, these large language models are really well positioned just to help with everyday tasks. Things like writing emails or drafting Excel formulas, summarizing meeting notes, right? And so that's a great place to just kind of, begin your sort of AI journey. Learning to prompt. So prompt engineering has been a kind of big phrase lately. And that can be a little awkward at first. I felt like when I was first created, like doing interactions with AI, I felt like I had to cater my speech to it, the machine, right? So I would say things like return values and interest, like terminology phrases I would never use, right, in a conversation with a human. But They've been created to speak as humans speak, right? And one thing that has been, I think, really helpful is just using actually the user story format. So as a product owner, I want, right, to see a model of product practices represented in this format so that I can, teach this to, a classroom, right? So conversing in that way, setting the context, and then helping AI realize kind of what you're looking to achieve. Most folks kind of start with sort of those one-turn prompts. So something like define this or summarize that. But the more time you kind of spend and the more comfortable that you get providing context to AI, you can find it becomes more just conversational. So an example of this, like I, first ask AI to just create a training plan for me. I was trying to do a half marathon. And so I kind of started with that user story format. So as my running coach, I want you to develop a training plan. I want it to incorporate speed work and rest days, right? So that I can arrive at my race day prepared. And I sort of then did more of the multi-turn or practice my multi-turns and continued down that path by broadening my conversation with AI to suggest playlist recommendations that are going to help keep me motivated. And what do I need to do to incorporate stretching into this routine so I avoid getting injured, right? And then what would I need to do to change this up if I wanted to go directly into training for a marathon? And so start to like get more and more comfortable, and it helps to start with those topics or something you're looking to achieve or some pain that point that you're trying to solve for yourself. So it does take some time to get to that sort of conversational level, but I have found that using that user story format helps, and it's as being in the Agile space and in product world, luckily that's usually some scenarios that we're really comfortable with writing. So a good place to start. And then lastly here, just experiment, right? So voice recognition, image creation, and then revisiting your routine. And, if your AI tool that you've of choice doesn't solve for something that you need help with, ask it whether their tool, might help you. So just some lightweight roles or lightweight things that you can do to just begin getting comfortable with AI and plugging it in to make your own life sort of a bit more efficient. But let's shift gears from there about from like sort of getting comfortable with AI itself to what do you need to know to actually deliver AI products and features? So this is all kind of coming out of my goals for this year. So as one of the product leaders in my company, my goal was to really understand how is the delivery of AI products impacting my practitioners, right? What are they seeing on those AI projects, and how do they need to be showing up differently? And do we need to be thinking about changing our ways of working in order to better prepare for those projects that might have or AI features and functionality related to them? And so in my effort to kind of understand this a little bit more, one clear problem sort of emerged from across my product community, and that was planning. And specifically, our product managers found that they were really capped at planning at just one, sometimes two sprints ahead of where they were. And that's because what they found with just these emerging AI technologies, it was not possible to know exactly how models were going to respond. And so this really created a problem for them, because how are the product managers supposed to plan, right? And especially in scaled environments where teams were maybe outlining their goals for almost a quarter's worth of work, this was just like not even feasible for them. And so what did our teams do, right? They found that moving towards hypothesis-driven development was really key in helping shift the mindset around delivering AI solutions. Okay, what is hypothesis-driven development, or HDD, since it's a little bit of a mouthful here? It's something that really emphasizes the forming and testing of hypotheses to validate ideas and make informed decisions for the future. So essentially, think back to those high school lab experiments you might have done. HDD uses those same basic concepts and applies them to product delivery. So if, like me, it's been years or decades since you've been walked into a high school lab, I'll do just sort of a quick refresher of the key sort of principles here. Important thing is taking a data-driven approach. Your whole goal, right, is to validate or refute the hypothesis. So you're going to want to be able to define what success looks like with some sort of measurable criteria, and be sure to include data throughout the design and development and testing of that hypothesis. We're going to want to incorporate experimental design. So structure experiments to isolate essentially the impact of our change, because we want to be able to essentially prove with confidence and reliability that the change we made led to these results. And then lastly, we want to have a focus on continuous learning. So we may prove that our approach does not work, and that's okay. It's about drawing insights from the outcome of our experiments and adjusting to build the better product. And you can kind of see here on the right, 5 sort of steps of hypothesis-driven development. And I'll quickly walk through those again, just as a refresher. But we'll kind of go through them quickly here. But the first step, really just defining the problem to solve. So the teams that I spoke with found a lot of success in identifying the risks that they knew they had to overcome. So for example, if that was performance or accuracy of responses, or even feasibility of a technical implementation, if there is some core functionality to prove out, start there. And take into account some of your highest risk areas to then define the problems that you have to solve. Next is actually formulating that hypothesis. This is your solutioning mode, right? So writing a hypothesis that captures how you expect your product to perform once this new change is in place. From there, we want to determine how you will test the hypothesis. So what does good enough look like for an AI solution? Does it need to match or exceed some sort of human standard that's already in place? Does it have to do better than an existing automated solution in the accuracy, efficiency, or from a customer service perspective? And then consider how you'll know if the new change introduced is enough or if it needs continued refinement. And the idea is that you're capturing all of this in your feature, in your story acceptance level criteria. Okay. Step 4 here, you formulated and tested your hypothesis. Now we want to obviously consider those results, right? How did your change stack up against that baseline of the current solution? And did it meet, exceed, fall short of the criteria you laid out? And that leads us to the final step, which is, of course, what will we do with this new information, right? So if your change performed at or above your desired state, can we move on and tackle a new risk? Is that good enough? If it fell short of that desired state, how do you refine based off of this new information? And from here, we, of course, continue back to the beginning, right, of our hypothesis-driven development cycle. So that's kind of that HDD kind of laid out. And this theory is all sort of fine and well, but what does it look like in actual practice? So we've got an example feature here. So here's a team that's using hypothesis driven development to build this Harry Potter themed routing app that aims to incorporate personalization into its recommendations. Of course, we've got our user's goal captured in the description. And then we've got our hypothesis captured with it as well. And it specifically calls out that personalized recommendations will result in this 20% improvement in engagement metrics. And it calls out, right, that means time spent on site and interactions with content. So we're specifically calling out what are those measurements that are important to us. And then in our acceptance criteria, it captures not only sort of the typical expectations of what will be delivered, but it's also going to include how to evaluate its effectiveness. So here, the third point, we've got A/B testing, right? It's also going to call out the cadence of evaluating metrics and the expectations for sort of continuous refinement of the algorithm itself. So for those of you who are not yet working on AI features or products, you might want to start thinking about how significant of a change this way of working may be for you, your team, your organization, and start considering, is this something you can begin to introduce even in small pockets, even with non-AI features, sort of in these small doses to begin to kind of train your team or train your organization for when AI features do begin to get introduced, to kind of help start this mindset change of we're not going to have all the answers with AI on day one. And so shifting towards this hypothesis-driven development is going to help us change our mindset in terms of delivery. Okay. And then I'll go through this one kind of quickly, but what exactly do we expect to get out of using hypothesis-driven development, right? This constant cycle of formulating and validating that's inherent to HDD. So some of the benefits we expect to see: algorithm optimization. We want to be able to help enhance the accuracy, efficiency, and adaptability of AI solutions. We want an iteratively trained model that's constantly improving its predictive capabilities. And then we want more focus on that user-centric enhancements. And through this continuous learning of user behavior and preferences using the HDD cycle, we're continuing to invest in those user-centric experiences. Okay. Lastly, as it pertains to AI, I recommend simply assessing sort of the readiness of yourself, your team, your organization. And so I formulated this sort of lightweight checklist based on some of the themes that have just surfaced as issues for the different product teams that I've worked with. So AI fundamentals, right? It's the responsibility of all of us to understand the basics of AI concepts and not your team's jobs to teach you. So really just that continuous learner attitude is important. We're at basically, the equivalent of the first version of the internet, right? At this point with AI. And so educating yourself, practicing, getting up to speed with your prompts, like these are all things that are, kind of your own responsibility. Data readiness. So this really speaks to the quality, availability, and the ability to monitor data. Without data, your AI attempts are not going to go anywhere. So these are just fundamental sort of prerequisites to building AI products. Ethical considerations. So are you developing something that is fair, free of biases, transparent, and respects the privacy of users? So having a POV, having company expectations around these things are important. And then thinking about your stakeholder impacts. What is the impact to the people surrounding the AI tool itself? So are you going to be met with reluctance, impact to jobs? What's sort of the change management here to consider? And then how to handle that governance and mitigate risks to adopting AI, thinking about scalability, thinking about the inherent biases. So a few things, again, our teams have found to really sort of assess their readiness. Okay, to kind of wrap this AI and product section, we'll kind of go through here and hopefully there's 3 things you can kind of walk away with today. And that's getting comfy with AI, just through your own personal use, experimenting with incorporating hypothesis-driven development on your teams. It's not something you have to wait for the actual, AI features to start with, but you can begin incorporating today. And then evaluating your readiness and beginning to think about ways to prepare your team and organization. I'll pause there. Any questions?
There's nothing in the chat.
Okay.
Max,
I raised my hand.
Thanks, Max.
May I go first? May I go first? Hello, thank you, Jill. Max Akesi from Austin here. There was one particular slide that you went over about the customer not really knowing what they want. And I saw a lot of people also giving a thumbs up and everything. And that's something that really connected with me. And there was, if I could just give some context, there was this one time that we were building a sales tool and we were going through stories after stories and sprint after sprint. And there was just feedback was just negative, even though we delivered all the stories that we were supposed to. So at some point, I was a scrum master at that point, long time ago. And I was like, why don't we just shadow the salesperson, end user? Why don't we do that? And we did it. And we were like shocked. They were using our tool and they were opening multiple windows and browsers. And we were confused at what they were doing. So we had a meeting with the end user. We're like, why do you do this? They're like, I don't have an authentication for this tool, so I have to use a different account for this tool, and I have to do, and we were like, this is like 3 days of work for us to fix, and the product owner had never brought it up, never. So I say this because a lot of times in the Agile space, we jump into, let's create stories, let's do acceptance criteria, let's do a lot of this. And then a lot of people can put the AI into it. And if you have AI being used by someone that is not really aware of how your end user uses the tools, the same thing is going to happen. You'll generate all this work, and then some things that could really add values are completely missed. So I would just like to share that. Thank you for emphasizing that about sometimes we just have to speak directly or shadow somehow, or somehow see how the software, the products are being used, because we would have thought that would have been something that would have come up when product was doing requirements gathering or whatever you want to talk about, right? And I'll just stop. So it was a question, it was a comment, it was sharing an experience.
No, I love that. I think that's so real. So many of us have, if you get the chance to do those types of ride-alongs or shadowings, it is sometimes those like very basic things that you're like, wait, that's what's been preventing? Like we could have solved that, in a day, right?
And it didn't come up. Like the surprising thing, it just didn't come up with all our processes in place. It didn't come up. And we were like, what is happening? But always love sharing that because it shows how we jump into stories and epics and backlog grooming and everything, and we miss some of the basic stuff. Thank you.
No, thanks, Max. Appreciate that. All right, time check here. 15 minutes. This last session is kind of short, but still important. So I'll shift gears here and talk about sort of our third topic, which is accessibility. And to frame that up, I'll talk a little bit about the curb cut effect. And really, this is time and time again, we have found that accessible experiences don't just benefit those with disabilities, but typically much larger audiences. And this happens so often that there's literally this name for it, which is the curb cut effect. And it refers to those sloping ramps that connect the sidewalk to the street below. They were originally introduced in the 1940s to allow wheelchair users easier access to sidewalks, but curb cuts help all of us, right? If you're rolling a suitcase, if you're pushing a stroller, right? If it just was leg day at the gym and you can hardly, pick your legs up, right? So think about some of those maybe innovative products that have been introduced with the thought of one user in mind, but benefit many. for me, a great example of this is audiobooks. They were invented for blind readers, but they're enjoyed by far more audiences, right? I love kicking back on a plane or at the beach, right? Just closing my eyes and listening to someone else sort of, bring my book to life. And so I think the key takeaway here is that when you address the needs of one group, it has the potential to benefit a much larger audience. And that is sort of the ripple effect of inclusion. So accessibility is really the cornerstone of inclusive design. And product managers really can't lose sight of what it means to reach these broader audiences and foster a more equitable user experience. And you got to consider the legal and ethical responsibilities to comply to laws, right? Expanding market research to include new audiences, enhanced user experiences, right? So no one ever complains about fonts that are easy to read or contain, clearly distinguished characters. Future-proofing your product, right? Incorporating accessible design keeps products relevant and compliant. And then how does that build brand loyalty and trust? How does it demonstrate an organization's commitment to inclusivity? And so the key takeaways here are, accessibility isn't just a checkbox. It's a fundamental way to incorporate responsible product ownership. And so by integrating accessibility into the product development process, you not only comply with those legal requirements, but you also unlock these opportunities for innovation and growth and social impact. There's also this federal regulation to be familiar with, and that's the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG. These are standards to design and test for accessibility. And they're really around ensuring our experiences are usable by those who may be accessing our products in different ways. And WCAG focuses in on 4 concepts across the top here. So perceivable. So can these things be accessed by sight, hearing, and touch? Are they operable? So are your navigation and controls, can they be operated through different ways? So through a mouse or through touch or keyboard or voice command. And then is the information and functionality easy to understand? And is that content robust? So is it compatible with those assistive technologies? So screen readers, voice commands, things along those lines. And then most organizations conform to the most recent version, which is 2.2 of WCAG. And most of them actually comply sort of at that AA level, as this kind of ensures really a solid level of user experience to the widest possible audience. So this AAA level is the most stringent level. It's difficult to meet. So really, we see most organizations kind of targeting that AA. So let's talk through a couple just examples here, and I'll start by calling out while some WCAG criteria can be fixed relatively easily after development. For example, like adding alternate text on an image. Some issues may fundamentally impact the design in ways that can be more disruptive later on. And a few examples of that are like color contrast. So WCAG requires that text, important graphics, and interactive elements must have a strong enough color contrast. And that color isn't used as the only way to convey meaning. So it should be partnered with labels and text. And if the image is communicating something, so we want to make sure that we see this violation a lot, and especially when it comes to charts and graphs. So the pairing of these different things, right? Color, text, right? Labels, all of that. And next, the site should allow for sort of multiple modes of operation. So some common violations here are when content is only displayed on maybe hover or features that rely exclusively on drag and drop functionality. These things are going to exclude users who can't use a mouse or a trackpad. And lastly, WCAG really specifies that primary navigation elements and help tools must appear in a consistent order and location across your site, so that users with screen readers can kind of navigate the experience in a logical and predictable way. And so if you don't plan for some of these sort of basic requirements up front, it may result in just significant rework that could have, significant time impacts on just your entire kind of site structure. Okay. So here's sort of the three takeaways that around accessibility that you can do today. The first one is publish an accessibility statement directly on your company's site. Let your users know that you care about accessibility by essentially sharing your commitment and any known issues that you are working on fixing, right? Many companies do this. They kind of call out, we're working on it, right? And we know we're not perfect there yet. Next, weave accessibility reviews and checklists into your design and your development process. So make sure your designers are designing for everyone. And that goes for the development team, right? Make sure that they're aware of WCAG and what those expectations are. And lastly, gather feedback from users with disabilities to really optimize your products for everyone, just like the curb cut effect. In fact, a lot of companies that do hackathons or innovation challenges or things along those lines, accessibility is a great possible topic to take on there, and drives innovation in terms of new ideas. Okay, so to wrap up, these were the three areas where a lot of organizations are investing time, and hopefully some of these sort of tactical next steps have been helpful, even if the conditions aren't perfect in your organization and there's not high level of investment being made. Hopefully you're left with something you can kind of take away and do today. And thank you so much for your time. It's really been a pleasure. I'm so happy to be able to connect again with Leland and just talk, get this opportunity to talk with you all today. But any other questions I can answer?
There's one in chat, and thanks, Jill, for doing this. The question is, any advice on finding companies already interested in HDD?
Oh, companies already interested in HDD. I mean, I would look for those companies. I mean, HDD, when I first heard it, it was in the Agile setting as well. I think with AI, there's definitely, it correlates really well with what you're developing. So definitely those organizations that lean more towards that experimental mindset. So those that are working in more agile settings today, I would probably be a better guess for me, or place to start. Also those that might be in the sciences, just like very generally, or take that more scientific approach. When I was pulling this together, my friends that work in the sciences, they're like, of course we do this all the time. But for many of us that are working in software development, you've got your roadmap and your outlines, and you're just execute, right? And this concept of working in that hypothesis and testing your theories is just not really part of the company culture. So, and if that all fails, if you're looking for new opportunities and interviewing, ask about it, right? How does your organization approach experimentation? Great question.
There's no other questions in the chat.
Any other live questions?
I don't have another question, but I really like the content, so thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Kaylee. Appreciate the feedback.
Yeah, I agree. This was awesome. Thanks, Jill.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks, folks. I think we can probably wrap it up a few minutes early then. Jill, thank you so much for the presentation. Really appreciate it. And in terms of, we've got the recording, and we will get that posted to our YouTube channel, probably by early next week. And also,
Ben, will you share this PowerPoint slide?
yeah, Jill, if you want to get that over to us, then yeah, we will share that on the meetup page as well.
Cool. Okay.
Jill,
Happy Friday, everyone.
Oh yeah, happy Friday.
Jill, any last words or any plugs or anything?
No, just thank you so much. I really appreciate being here, and what a great group, and some fantastic questions. And thanks, Max, for sharing some of your experiences. Glad this resonates with.
Yes. Thank
Oh,
you, Matt.
Ben, can I do a quick plug for the Keep Austin Agile Conference
Yeah, sure.
2025? Hey, Ben, myself, who are on the board, and a bunch of other people who are on the planning committees. We're doing our annual Agile Austin Conference, which is Keep Austin Agile 2025. Okay, it's live, it's out there. I'll put it in the chat, but Ben will also put the link on the meetup. Save the day, buy a ticket, share the good news. We're looking for speakers, sponsors, but the main thing, we're going to come together for a day with fellow folks in the Agile space in Austin and hang out on Thursday, April 24th of 2025. So don't plan your trip to Hawaii or whatever that same week, okay? Save the day.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you, Ben and Leland.
I really
All
appreciate
right,
it.
thanks.
Jill.
Thank you.
Next time around.